David sat in the corner booth of the coffee shop, checking his watch for the third time in 5 minutes. His hands were sweating and he couldn't remember the last time he felt this nervous. Actually, he could. It was 7 years ago on his first date with his ex-wife. That thought made his stomach turn a little. His older sister Jennifer had practically forced him into this. She'd been pestering him for months, saying he needed to get back out there and start living again. The divorce had been final for 2 years now, but David had thrown himself into work, using his company as an excuse to avoid the dating world entirely. "You're not getting any younger," Jennifer had said last week, waving her phone in his face. "I know someone perfect for you. Just one date. What's the worst that could happen?" David had eventually given in, but not before making a decision that even he thought was a bit crazy. He'd left his expensive watch at home, taken off his designer shoes, and replaced them with an old pair of sneakers he'd found in his closet. He wore faded jeans with a small hole in the knee and a plain gray t-shirt that he usually wore on lazy Sundays. His leather jacket was the only thing that looked somewhat decent, but even that had seen better days. In his wallet, he'd placed exactly $20. Nothing more. His credit cards, his business cards, everything that screamed successful CEO was sitting in a drawer at home. If this woman was going to like him, it would be for who he was as a person, not for the size of his bank account. The bell above the door chimed, and David looked up. A woman walked in, glancing around the coffee shop with slightly worried eyes. She was pretty in a natural way, with her brown hair pulled back in a simple ponytail and wearing a floral dress that looked like it came from a regular department store, not some fancy boutique. She spotted him and walked over with a small, apologetic smile. "David, I'm so sorry I'm late. The bus was running behind and then I couldn't find parking and—" She trailed off, taking a breath. "I'm Katie, it's nice to meet you." David stood up and shook her hand, immediately feeling some of his nervousness fade. There was something genuine about her, something that put him at ease. "No worries at all. I just got here myself, that was a lie." He'd been there for 20 minutes, but he didn't want her to feel worse about being late. They walked up to the counter together and David studied the prices on the board. A regular coffee was $3.50. That would leave him with enough for maybe a sandwich if they decided to grab lunch later. He ordered a black coffee and Katie asked for the same. "You don't want anything fancy?" Katie asked, gesturing at the list of lattes and cappuccinos. "Jennifer told me you were, well, she made it sound like you did pretty well for yourself." David felt his heart skip a beat. What had his sister told her? "I do okay," he said carefully, pulling out his wallet and handing over a $10 bill. "But I'm simple when it comes to coffee. How about you?" Katie smiled and David noticed how it reached her eyes. "Same here. I mean, I love a good vanilla latte, but they're like $6. That's lunch money, you know?" They settled back into the booth and David found himself relaxing more as they talked. Katie was an elementary school teacher, 4th grade at a public school on the east side of town. The way she talked about her students, you could tell she genuinely loved what she did. "There's this one kid, Tommy," she said, her whole face lighting up. "At the start of the year, he could barely read. His mom works 2 jobs, so nobody's really had time to sit with him. I started staying after school twice a week, just him and me. Last Friday, he read an entire chapter book by himself. I almost cried." David listened, genuinely interested. "That's amazing. You stayed after school on your own time?" Katie shrugged like it was nothing. "The kids are worth it. I mean, I don't get paid for those extra hours, but what's money compared to seeing a kid's face when they finally get it, you know?" As she talked more, David learned that Katie had a younger brother in college. She'd been helping him with tuition because their parents had passed away a few years ago in a car accident. She worked a weekend tutoring job, teaching kids from struggling families, just to make enough to keep sending her brother money each month. "I've been saving every penny," she said, stirring her coffee absently. "He's got 1 more year left, and I'm determined to see him graduate without drowning in loans. It's what Mom and Dad would have wanted." David felt something twist in his chest. Here was this woman, barely making ends meet, sacrificing her own comfort to help her brother. She wasn't complaining about it. She wasn't looking for sympathy. She was just stating facts, the same way someone might talk about the weather. "That's really incredible," David said quietly. "Your brother is lucky to have you." "I'm lucky to have him," Katie replied with a smile. "He's a good kid, studying engineering. Way smarter than I ever was." They talked for over an hour, and David realized he was actually enjoying himself. Katie was funny without trying too hard. She asked questions and actually listened to the answers. When he mentioned he had a 7-year-old daughter, her eyes widened with interest. "What's her name?" Katie asked. "Sophie. She's with her mom this week. We split custody." "That must be hard," Katie said, and there was real sympathy in her voice. "But I bet you're a great dad." "I try to be," David admitted. "She's my whole world." As they got up to leave, David's stomach rumbled quietly. Katie laughed. "I heard that. Have you eaten lunch?" David glanced at his wallet, mentally calculating. He had about $13 left. "I could eat you." "I'm starving, actually, but—" Katie bit her lip. "I'm kind of on a tight budget this week. I had an unexpected car repair and I'm trying to stretch things until payday." David appreciated her honesty. Another woman might have expected him to pay for everything, or worse, might have lied about her situation. "There's a diner down the street. How about we split an appetizer or something? My treat, but nothing fancy." Katie's face showed relief. "That sounds perfect." They walked to the diner and David found himself watching Katie more than he probably should have. She stopped to pet a dog tied up outside a store, asking the owner about the dog's breed and age. She held the door open for an elderly man struggling with his walker. When a kid on a skateboard almost crashed into her, she laughed it off instead of getting angry. At the diner, things got even more interesting. The waitress came over looking tired and stressed. Katie immediately smiled at her. "Hey, Linda," she said, reading the name tag. "Tough day?" The waitress, Linda, looked surprised that someone had actually spoken to her like a human being. "You could say that. What can I get you, folks?" What happened next made David see Katie in an entirely new light. And he realized this blind date was turning into something he hadn't expected at all. They ordered a plate of mozzarella sticks to share, and David watched as Katie chatted with Linda, the waitress, like they were old friends. She asked about Linda's shift, complimented her earrings, and genuinely seemed interested in the answers. When Linda walked away to put in their order, Katie turned back to David with that same warm smile. "Sorry, I talked to everyone," she said with a little laugh. "My brother says I could make friends with a brick wall." "Don't apologize," David said. "It's nice. Most people don't even look at servers." The mozzarella sticks arrived and they both reached for one at the same time, laughing when their hands bumped. The conversation flowed easily. Katie told him about a school fundraiser she was organizing, trying to get new books for the library. David found himself wanting to write a check right then and there, but he couldn't, not without blowing his cover. "The kids deserve better," Katie said, dipping a mozzarella stick in marinara sauce. "Some of them don't have books at home. The library is their only access to reading outside of textbooks. But the district keeps cutting our budget, so we have to get creative." David made a mental note. Maybe his company could donate anonymously. He'd figure it out later. They were almost done eating when David noticed an elderly woman at the table next to them. She was sitting alone and her napkin had fallen on the floor. She was trying to bend down to reach it, but David could see she was struggling. Before he could move to help, Katie was already out of her seat. "Here, let me get that for you," Katie said, picking up the napkin and handing it to the woman with a gentle smile. The elderly woman looked up, gratitude in her eyes. "Thank you, dear. These old bones don't bend like they used to." Katie didn't just hand her the napkin and walk away. She stayed there, standing by the woman's table. "Are you having lunch by yourself today?" The woman nodded, and David saw a flash of sadness cross her face. "I am. My husband passed 6 months ago. We used to come here every Wednesday for lunch. I'm trying to keep the tradition alive, but—" She trailed off, her voice catching slightly. Katie pulled out a chair and sat down, not even asking. "I'm sorry for your loss. 50 years is beautiful, though. You must have so many wonderful memories." David watched, amazed, as Katie spent the next 10 minutes talking with this complete stranger. The woman's name was Dorothy, and she lit up as she talked about her late husband, George. She showed Katie pictures on her phone. Katie laughed at the right moments and looked genuinely sad at the painful parts. When Dorothy mentioned that the hardest part was the loneliness, Katie did something that made David's heart skip a beat. She pulled out her phone and asked for Dorothy's number. "I'd love to call you sometime," Katie said. "Maybe we could meet for coffee, or I could just call to chat. Everyone deserves to have someone to talk to." Dorothy's eyes filled with tears. "You'd really do that? You don't even know me." "I'd like to know you," Katie said simply, "if you're comfortable with it." They exchanged numbers, and Katie gave Dorothy a hug before coming back to their table. She sat down like nothing extraordinary had just happened, taking the last mozzarella stick. "You're something else," David said quietly. Katie looked confused. "What do you mean? That what you just did? Most people would have just picked up the napkin and moved on." Katie shrugged, looking a bit embarrassed. She looked lonely. "I know what that feels like. After my parents died, there were days when I felt so alone, even with my brother around. If someone had reached out to me like that, it would have meant the world. I guess I just tried to be the person I needed back then." David felt something shift inside him. This wasn't an act. This was just who Katie was. He'd met plenty of people who did charity work for tax write-offs or social media posts. Katie was different. She saw people, really saw them and cared about them without expecting anything in return. When the check came, David paid with his remaining cash, leaving just enough for a decent tip. He was down to about $4 now, but he didn't care. This date was worth every penny and more. "Want to take a walk?" Katie asked as they left the diner. "There's a nice park a few blocks from here. Unless you need to get going?" David's phone had been buzzing in his pocket for the last hour. He knew it was probably his assistant with some urgent matter that really wasn't that urgent. A walk sounds perfect. They strolled through the park and David found himself telling Katie things he hadn't told anyone in a long time. He talked about his divorce, carefully avoiding details about his work. He told her about the guilt he felt about splitting time with Sophie, about worrying that he wasn't doing enough as a father. "The fact that you worry about it means you're probably doing better than you think," Katie said. "Bad parents don't question themselves. They just assume they're right about everything." "Is that a teacher thing? Having wisdom about parenting?" Katie laughed. "I see a lot of different parenting styles. The best parents are the ones who actually spend time with their kids. Not quality time or scheduled activities, just time, being present. It sounds like you do that." David thought about the hours he spent at the office, the business trips, the late-night calls. "I try to. It's not always easy with work." "What do you do again?" Katie asked. "I don't think you ever said." David felt his stomach tighten. This was the moment he'd been dreading. "I work in tech. Management stuff. It's pretty boring, honestly." It wasn't exactly a lie. He did work in tech, and management was technically what CEOs did. Katie seemed satisfied with the answer and didn't push for more details. They found a bench near a small pond where ducks were swimming. Katie pulled a granola bar from her purse, broke off small pieces, and tossed them to the ducks. A little girl, maybe 4 years old, came running over with her dad trailing behind. "Duckies," the girl squealed. Katie smiled at her. "Do you want to help feed them?" She offered a piece of granola bar to the girl, who looked at her father for permission. He nodded, and the girl carefully took the food, throwing it toward the ducks with pure joy on her face. "What do you say?" the father prompted. "Thank you," the little girl said, beaming at Katie. After they left, David turned to Katie. "You're really good with kids. I can see why you became a teacher." "Kids are honest," Katie said. "They don't pretend to be something they're not. They just are." "I like that." David felt a pang of guilt. Here he was, pretending to be something he wasn't, while Katie valued honesty above everything else. His phone buzzed again, and this time he pulled it out, frowning at the screen. "Everything okay?" Katie asked, noticing his expression. David saw 3 missed calls from his business partner and several texts marked urgent. "Just work stuff. Nothing that can't wait." But Katie had noticed his stress. "If you need to take care of something, I understand. I don't want to keep you if there's something important." "This is important," David said, putting his phone back in his pocket. "Work can wait. This right now with you, this is what matters." Katie's smile was worth more than any business deal he'd ever closed. They sat there for another hour, just talking about everything and nothing. She told him about her dreams of maybe opening a tutoring center one day, where kids from low-income families could get help for free. He told her about his love of hiking and old movies, careful to keep the conversation away from anything that might reveal his real identity. As the sun started to set, they walked back toward the coffee shop where they'd met. David didn't want the day to end, but he also knew he couldn't keep this up forever. At some point, Katie would find out who he really was. The question was when and how she'd react when she did. "I had a really great time today," Katie said when they reached her car, an old sedan that had definitely seen better days. "Me too," David said, and he meant it more than she could possibly know. "Can I see you again?" Katie's smile was answer enough, but she said it anyway. "I'd like that." As he watched her drive away, David pulled out his phone and finally checked his messages. Nothing that couldn't have waited. Nothing more important than what had just happened. He'd spent years building a company, making money, achieving success that most people only dreamed about. But standing there in that parking lot watching Katie's taillights disappear, he realized something. For the first time in a very long time, he felt like he'd found something real, something money couldn't buy, and he wasn't about to let it slip away. 3 weeks had passed since that first date, and David found himself living two completely different lives. At work, he was the CEO, making million-dollar decisions and leading board meetings in expensive suits. But every evening and weekend, he transformed back into the simple version of himself that Katie knew. They'd seen each other 6 times now. Coffee dates at the same little shop, a picnic in the park where they'd both brought sandwiches from home, a movie at the discount theater where tickets were only $5. David had gotten pretty good at living on a budget, at least when he was with Katie. Tonight, he was at her apartment for the first time. Katie had insisted on cooking dinner, saying it was cheaper than going out, and she made a mean pasta dish. Her apartment was small, maybe a quarter of the size of his house, but it was cozy. Pictures of her family covered the walls. The furniture looked like it came from thrift stores, but everything was clean and arranged with care. "Make yourself at home," Katie called from the kitchen. "Sorry, it's not much. The rent is cheap, though, and it's close to the school." David sat on her worn couch looking around. There was a small bookshelf overflowing with books, most of them children's stories. A laptop sat on a tiny desk in the corner, probably where she did her lesson planning. Everything about this place screamed Katie, warm and genuine and unpretentious. She emerged from the kitchen carrying 2 plates of spaghetti. "I hope you like garlic. I might have gone a little overboard." They ate sitting on the couch, plates balanced on their laps, watching an old movie on her small TV. David couldn't remember the last time he'd felt this relaxed. No business talk. No networking. Just 2 people enjoying each other's company. "So I have to tell you something," Katie said during a commercial break. "Something good happened today." David set down his plate. "Yeah, what's that?" "My brother called. He got this scholarship. A full scholarship for his last year of school." Katie's eyes were shining with tears. "I can't believe it. I've been so worried about how we'd make it work, and then this just falls into our lap. It's from some foundation that partners with his university. They called it a merit-based scholarship for students showing academic excellence and financial need." David felt his chest tighten. He'd set that up 2 weeks ago, working with his company's charitable foundation. They partnered with several universities, and it had been easy enough to make sure Katie's brother was flagged for review. The kid actually did have excellent grades. David hadn't lied about that. He'd just made sure the right people saw his application. "That's amazing," David said, and he meant it. "Your brother must be so relieved." "We both are." Katie wiped at her eyes. "I was lying awake at night doing math, trying to figure out how to make it work. I was thinking about picking up another tutoring job, maybe selling my car and just taking the bus everywhere. And now I don't have to. It's like a miracle." She threw her arms around David, hugging him tight. He held her, feeling both happy that he could help and guilty that he'd done it behind her back. But what was he supposed to do? Tell her the truth and have her refuse the help because of pride? Or worse, have her think he was only helping because they were dating? "Your brother deserves it," David said. "You both do." They finished the movie, and David helped Katie clean up the kitchen. It was such a normal domestic thing, washing dishes side by side, but it felt significant somehow, like they were building something real together. "Can I ask you something?" Katie said, drying a plate. "And you can tell me if I'm being nosy." "Sure," David said, though his stomach knotted with worry. "You never really talk about your work. I mean, I know you said it's tech management, but that's about it. Do you not like your job?" David paused, his hands in the soapy water. This was it. The moment where he could come clean. Tell her everything. But the words stuck in his throat. "It's complicated," he finally said. "I like what I do, but it's stressful. Long hours. A lot of pressure. When I'm with you, I get to forget about all that. It's nice to just be myself, you know?" Katie nodded, seeming to accept that answer. "I get it. We all need an escape sometimes." But David could tell she'd noticed his evasiveness. A small wrinkle appeared between her eyebrows, the one that showed up when she was thinking hard about something. His phone buzzed on the counter. David glanced at it and saw his business partner's name flashing on the screen. He'd been calling all evening. You should probably get that, Katie said. It seems important. It can wait. David. Katie put down the dish towel and looked at him seriously. I'm not going anywhere. If you need to take care of work stuff, take care of it. I understand that work is important. David picked up the phone and stepped into the hallway. What's up? Finally, his partner said. We've got a problem with the Johnson account. They're threatening to pull out unless you call them personally. Tonight. Can't it wait until morning? They're on East Coast time. It's already almost midnight there. If we don't handle this now, we lose a $5 million contract. David closed his eyes. $5 million. A year ago, he would have jumped on that call without hesitation. But now, standing in the hallway of Katie's small apartment, he found himself not caring as much as he should. Send me their number. I'll call them in 10 minutes. He went back inside where Katie was loading the dishwasher. I have to make a work call. I'm really sorry. It's okay, Katie said, but he could see the disappointment in her eyes. Do what you need to do. David made the call, pacing in Katie's tiny living room while she tried to give him privacy by staying in the kitchen. He smooth-talked the client, made promises, negotiated terms. By the time he hung up 20 minutes later, the contract was saved. But the evening was effectively over. I should probably go, David said, feeling like he'd somehow failed a test he didn't know he was taking. Katie walked him to the door. Thanks for coming over. Even if work interrupted. I had a great time, David said. Really? Me too. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes this time. David drove home in his actual car, the expensive one he'd been parking blocks away from wherever they met. He pulled into his driveway, looking at his large house, feeling emptier than it had in a long time. His daughter Sophie was inside with the nanny. David paid her and went to check on Sophie, who was already asleep. He stood in her doorway, watching her breathe peacefully, her stuffed rabbit tucked under her arm. I met someone, he whispered, even though Sophie couldn't hear him. Someone special, and I'm messing it up. The next morning, David was in his office early, staring at his computer screen without really seeing it. His assistant knocked and came in with his coffee. You look terrible, she said bluntly. They'd worked together for 5 years, and she'd earned the right to be honest with him. Thanks, Patricia. Woman trouble? She asked, setting the coffee on his desk. David laughed humorlessly. How'd you guess? You've been distracted for weeks, and you've been leaving the office at reasonable hours. That's not like you. Patricia sat down in the chair across from him. Want to talk about it? David found himself telling her everything. The disguise. The dates. Katie's kindness. The scholarship. The guilt. Patricia listened without interrupting, which was one of the many reasons she was good at her job. So let me get this straight, she said when he finished. You're pretending to be someone you're not because you want her to like the real you? When she put it like that, it sounded ridiculous. Yeah, basically. David, the real you is a CEO. That's not fake. You're lying to her by pretending you're not. I know, David admitted. But if I tell her now, she'll think I've been playing some kind of game. Or worse, she'll think the scholarship for her brother was about us, not about him. Was it about him? David thought about that. Yes, the kid really does have excellent grades. He deserves that scholarship. I just made sure it happened faster than it might have otherwise. Patricia stood up. Then tell her that. Tell her all of it. If she's as genuine as you say she is, she'll understand. And if she doesn't, then you'll know she wasn't the right person anyway. Patricia headed for the door. But you can't build something real on a foundation of lies. That never works. After she left, David pulled out his phone. He had a text from Katie asking if he wanted to meet her volunteer tutoring session on Sunday. He'd agreed weeks ago to come help. He typed back, I'll be there. And Katie, we need to talk. There's something I need to tell you. He stared at the message for a long moment before hitting send. His heart was pounding. This could go very wrong, very fast. But Patricia was right. He couldn't keep living this double life. Katie deserved the truth, even if the truth might scare her away. 3 dots appeared on his screen showing Katie was typing. David held his breath. Her response came through. Okay, that sounds serious. Everything all right? David typed back, it will be. I hope. He set the phone down and turned to look out his office window at the city below. Somewhere out there, Katie was probably sitting in her classroom preparing lessons for her students, completely unaware that her whole perception of him was about to change. David just hoped that when it did, she'd give him a chance to explain. because losing her wasn't something he was ready to face. Sunday afternoon arrived faster than David wanted it to. He stood outside the community center where Katie volunteered, his palms sweating despite the cool weather. He'd been rehearsing what to say for 2 days, but none of it sounded right in his head. The plan had changed. Instead of telling her before the tutoring session, he'd decided to wait until after. He didn't want to ruin her time with the kids. That's what he told himself anyway. Deep down, he knew he was just stalling. Katie spotted him from across the parking lot and waved, her face lighting up with that smile he'd come to love. She was wearing jeans and an old college sweatshirt, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She looked beautiful. "You made it," she said, giving him a quick hug. "Thanks for coming. Fair warning, these kids have a lot of energy." "I can handle it," David said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. Inside, about 15 kids ranging from ages 8 to 12 were scattered around a large room. Some were working on math problems, others were reading, and a few were just goofing off. 2 other volunteers were already there, helping where they could. "All right, everyone," Katie called out, clapping her hands to get their attention. "We have a special helper today. This is Mr. David, and he's going to be working with whoever needs help." A small boy with glasses raised his hand immediately. "I need help with fractions. I hate fractions." David found himself sitting at a table with 3 kids explaining how to add fractions with different denominators. It had been years since he'd thought about basic math like this, but it came back to him. More importantly, he found himself enjoying it. The kids were funny and curious, asking questions that had nothing to do with math and everything to do with life. "Do you have kids?" one girl asked him while working on a multiplication problem. "I have a daughter. She's 7. Is she smart?" David smiled. "Very smart. Smarter than me, probably." "My dad says that about me too," the girl said proudly, then went back to her worksheet. David glanced across the room at Katie, who was reading with a group of younger kids. She was doing different voices for each character in the book, making the children laugh. She caught his eye and smiled, and David felt his resolve strengthen. He had to tell her the truth. She deserved that much. 2 hours flew by. When the session ended and the last parent picked up their child, Katie flopped down in a chair, looking exhausted but happy. "You're a natural," she said to David. "The kids loved you." "They're great kids," David said honestly. "You do this every Sunday?" "Every Sunday for the past 3 years. It's my favorite part of the week." Katie grabbed her bag and stood up. "Want to grab some food? There's a taco truck nearby that's pretty cheap and really good." David's stomach clenched. This was it. "Actually, I was wondering if we could go somewhere and talk. There's something I need to tell you." Katie's smile faded slightly. "That sounds ominous. Should I be worried?" "No, maybe, I don't know." David ran his hand through his hair. "I just need to be honest with you about something." They ended up at the same park where they'd had their first walk, sitting on the same bench by the pond. The sun was starting to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It would have been romantic if David's heart wasn't hammering in his chest. "So," Katie said, turning to face him, "what did you want to talk about?" David took a deep breath. "I haven't been completely honest with you about who I am." Katie's expression became guarded. "What do you mean, my job?" "I didn't lie exactly, but I didn't tell you the whole truth either." David forced himself to look at her. "I'm not just in tech management. I own the company. I'm the CEO. It's called Tech Core Solutions." Katie stared at him, processing this information. "Tech Core? That company that's always in the news? The one that just went public last year? Yeah, that's mine. So when you said you did okay?" Katie trailed off, the realization hitting her. "You're rich. Really rich?" "Yes." Katie stood up, pacing a few steps away. "Why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me think you were just some regular guy struggling to get by?" "Because I wanted you to like me for me," David said, standing up too. "Not for my bank account. Do you know how many people only see the money? They don't see me. They see what I can do for them, what they can get from me. So you lied. I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you everything." "That's the same thing, David." Katie's voice rose, and David could see tears forming in her eyes. "I told you everything about me. About my struggles, my financial problems, my worries about my brother. And the whole time you were sitting there probably thinking how pathetic I was." "No," David said firmly, taking a step toward her. "That's not what I was thinking at all. I was thinking about how incredible you are. How you give so much of yourself despite having so little. How you care about people, really care, without expecting anything in return. Katie, you're the most genuine person I've ever met. And the scholarship? Katie's voice broke. My brother's scholarship. Tell me that was real. Tell me you didn't do that. David hesitated, and that hesitation was all the answer Katie needed. Oh my God, she said, backing away from him. You did. You set that up. Your brother earned that scholarship, David said quickly. His grades are excellent. He legitimately qualified. I just made sure the right people reviewed his application. That's all. That's all? Katie laughed, but there was no humor in it.
David, that was our business.
Mine and my brother's. You had no right to interfere. I wanted to help. I didn't ask for your help. Katie was crying now, tears streaming down her face. I didn't ask for any of this. I thought we were building something real. I thought you understood me. But you were just playing some kind of game, weren't you? Poor little teacher and the rich guy slumming it. It wasn't like that, David said, feeling desperate. Katie, please. Everything I felt, everything we shared, that was real. The only thing I hid was the money. The money isn't the point, Katie said, wiping at her eyes. The point is you didn't trust me enough, to be honest. You made decisions for me about my life without even asking. How am I supposed to trust you now? David felt like he'd been punched in the chest. I made a mistake. I know that. But my feelings for you are real. Katie, I'm falling in love with you. Katie closed her eyes, more tears falling. Please don't say that right now. It's true, maybe it is. But it doesn't change the fact that you lied to me, and I don't know how to get past that. Katie picked up her bag from the bench. I need some time to think. I need space. So how much time? David asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't know. I need to process this. Katie started walking toward the parking lot, then stopped and turned back. For what it's worth, I was falling for you too. The you I thought you were. I don't know if that person even exists. He does, David said. I promise you he does. But Katie was already walking away. David watched her get in her car and drive off, and he felt more helpless than he'd ever felt in his life. In business, there was always another strategy, another angle, another way to fix things. But this wasn't business. This was real life, real feelings, and he'd screwed it up. He sat back down on the bench, putting his head in his hands. His phone buzzed with a message from his sister Jennifer. How'd the talk go? She'd written, David typed back, I told her. She's upset. She needs space. Give it to her, Jennifer replied. If it's meant to be, she'll come around. David wanted to believe that, but he wasn't sure. He'd seen the hurt in Katie's eyes, the betrayal. He'd broken her trust. And trust was something that couldn't be bought or negotiated. It had to be earned. And he'd thrown away all the trust they'd built. The sun had fully set now, and the park was getting dark. David finally stood up and walked to his car, the expensive one he'd been hiding all this time. He sat in the driver's seat, staring at the steering wheel. His phone rang. For a split second, his heart leaped, thinking it might be Katie. But it was his business partner. Hey, we got the Henderson deal, his partner said excitedly. 3-year contract, $8 million total. This is huge. That's great, David said, but the words felt hollow. You don't sound excited. I am. I just have a lot on my mind. After hanging up, David drove home slowly, dreading the empty house waiting for him. Sophie was with her mom this week, which meant he'd be alone with his thoughts, alone with the knowledge that he might have just lost the best thing that had happened to him in years. When he got home, he didn't go inside right away. He sat in his driveway, looking at his house with its perfect landscaping and expensive everything. For the first time in his life, all of it felt meaningless. What good was success if you had no one to share it with? What good was money if it drove away the people you cared about? David finally went inside and poured himself a drink he didn't really want. He pulled out his phone and looked at the photos he'd taken with Katie over the past few weeks. Her laughing at the park, her reading to the kids at the community center, her sitting on her apartment couch relaxed and happy. He sent her one text. I'm sorry. For everything. Take all the time you need. I'll be here when you're ready to talk. He didn't expect a response, and he didn't get one. David set his phone down and stared out the window at the city lights below, wondering if he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life, and wondering even more if there was any way to fix it. 5 days passed without a word from Katie. 5 days that felt like 5 years. David threw himself into work, but his heart wasn't in it. He snapped at his assistant, dozed off during meetings, and barely ate. His sister Jennifer called him every day to check on him, but he had nothing new to report. Give her time, Jennifer kept saying. She'll come around, but David wasn't so sure. He'd replayed their last conversation 1,000 times in his head, and each time he saw the hurt in Katie's eyes more clearly. He'd broken something precious, and he didn't know if it could be fixed. On the 6th day, David was in his office staring at his computer screen when Patricia knocked and walked in without waiting for an answer. That's how he knew something was up. "You have a visitor," she said. David's heart jumped. "Katie?" "No, her brother." Patricia stepped aside, and a young man in his early 20s walked in, looking nervous but determined. "I'm Tyler," he said, extending his hand. "Katie's brother. We need to talk." David stood up and shook his hand, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. "Please, sit down." Tyler sat, looking around the office with wide eyes before focusing back on David. "So this is where you work. Katie told me everything. About the scholarship, about you pretending to be someone else, all of it." David's stomach dropped. "Look, I know I messed up, but your scholarship was legitimate. You earned that." "I know," Tyler said. "I looked into it. My grades did qualify me, but you pulled strings to make sure I got it." "I did? Why?" Tyler leaned forward. "Why would you do that for someone you barely know?" David thought about how to answer that. "Because your sister was losing sleep over it, because she was willing to sacrifice everything to help you, and I had the power to make it easier for her. I didn't do it to manipulate her or to make her feel like she owed me. I did it because I care about her, and seeing her stressed was killing me." Tyler studied him for a long moment. "Katie said you lied to her." "I didn't tell her the whole truth. There's a difference, but I understand why she feels the way she does." "Do you love her?" Tyler asked bluntly. The question caught David off guard. "Yes, I do." "Then you need to do something about it, because she's been crying for 6 days straight and it's killing me to watch." Tyler stood up. "She loves you too. She's just hurt and confused. But sitting here feeling sorry for yourself isn't going to fix anything." After Tyler left, David sat there thinking. The kid was right. He couldn't just wait around hoping Katie would forgive him. He needed to show her that he understood what he'd done wrong. More than that, he needed to show her who he really was. The full picture, not just the parts he'd been hiding. That evening, David made a decision. He pulled out his phone and started making calls. 3 days later, on a Saturday morning, Katie got a call from an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Hello? Ms. Morrison? This is Patricia Chen from TechCore Solutions. I'm calling about an opportunity that might interest you." Katie's heart skipped a beat at the mention of David's company. "I'm listening." "We're launching a new nonprofit initiative focused on education equity. Specifically, we're looking to support teachers working in underprivileged areas and to create free tutoring centers across the city. We're looking for someone to head this initiative, and your name came up. Would you be interested in meeting with us to discuss it?" Katie's mind was racing. "Did David put you up to this?" "Mr. Reeves suggested we reach out to you, yes. But this initiative is real, and it's something our board has been discussing for months. We've been looking for the right person to lead it. From what I understand about your work, you'd be perfect. The decision would be yours, of course, but we'd love to talk." Katie agreed to come in, more out of curiosity than anything else. 2 days later, she found herself in a conference room at TechCore Solutions, sitting across from Patricia and 2 board members. David wasn't there, which she was both relieved and disappointed about. They laid out their vision. 5 tutoring centers across the city, a program to provide resources and training for teachers in struggling schools, a scholarship fund for students who showed promise but lacked means. It was everything Katie had ever dreamed of doing but never thought possible. "This is a real position," one of the board members said. "Competitive salary, full benefits, a budget to make actual change. We're not offering this because of your relationship with David. We're offering it because we've done our research, and you're the person we want." "But David suggested me," Katie said. "He did," Patricia admitted. "He told us about your work, your passion, your dedication. But we make our own decisions here. We wouldn't offer you this job if we didn't think you were the right fit." They gave Katie a week to think about it. As she left the building, she stood in the lobby, overwhelmed. Part of her wanted to take the job immediately. It was everything she wanted. But another part of her wondered if accepting it meant forgiving David before she was ready. She was still standing there, lost in thought, when she heard a familiar small voice. "Are you my daddy's friend?" Katie turned to see a little girl with pigtails looking up at her with curious eyes. She recognized her from the photo David had shown her. Sophie. Hi, Katie said, crouching down to the girl's level. I'm Katie, you must be Sophie. My daddy talks about you, Sophie said matter-of-factly. He said you're a teacher and that you're really nice. A woman approached, looking apologetic. Sophie, you can't just run up to strangers, she looked at Katie. I'm so sorry. It's okay, Katie said, standing up. We sort of know each other. Sophie tugged on the woman's sleeve. Is Daddy coming down? I want to show him my drawing. He'll be down in a few minutes, the woman said. Katie's heart started racing. She wasn't ready to see David yet. I should go. But before she could leave, the elevator doors opened and David stepped out. He froze when he saw her, and for a moment they just stared at each other. Katie, he said softly. Sophie ran to him, and he scooped her up automatically, never taking his eyes off Katie. Daddy, I met your friend Katie. She's pretty. Despite everything, Katie felt herself smile. Hi, David. Hi, he set Sophie down. Sophie, can you go with Jennifer for a few minutes? I need to talk to Katie. The woman, who must have been his sister, took Sophie's hand and led her away, but not before giving David an encouraging nod. They stood there in the lobby, neither knowing quite what to say. I heard about the job offer, Katie finally said. I wanted you to know that it's real. It's not me trying to buy your forgiveness or manipulate you. It's a legitimate opportunity, and you don't have to decide about us to decide about that. I know, Katie said. Your board made that clear. Good. David shoved his hands in his pockets, looking more vulnerable than she'd ever seen him. Katie, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for not being honest with you from the start. You were right about everything. I should have trusted you. I should have told you the truth. Why didn't you? Katie asked. The real reason? David took a deep breath. Because everyone wants something from me. Business partners, dates my sister sets me up with, people I meet at events. They all see the money first and me second. When I met you and you didn't know who I was, you saw me. Just me. And it felt so good that I didn't want it to end. I was selfish. You were, Katie agreed. But I understand why. I'm still hurt, but I understand. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, David said. But I want you to know something. The man you met at that coffee shop, the one who walked with you in the park and helped kids with their math homework, that was the real me. The money doesn't change who I am inside. It just complicated things. Katie felt tears welling up. I miss you. I miss you too, David said, his voice thick with emotion. So much. I'm scared, Katie admitted. Your world is so different from mine. What if I don't fit into it? What if the money does change things? Then we figure it out together, David said, taking a tentative step closer. Katie, I don't want someone who fits perfectly into my world. I want someone who challenges me, who reminds me what really matters. I want you. Katie wiped at her eyes. I need you to promise me something. No more secrets. No more making decisions for me. We're partners or we're nothing. I promise, David said without hesitation. Complete honesty from here on out. And the job, Katie said. I want to take it. But I'm taking it for me, because it's what I want to do, not because of us. I wouldn't want it any other way. Katie took a step toward him, then another, until she was close enough to touch him. I love you, David, the real you. Rich or poor, CEO or whatever. I love the man who sat in a diner and split an appetizer with me. Who helped kids with math homework. Who wants to be better. I love you too, David said, and then he was holding her and she was holding him back, and it felt like coming home. When they finally pulled apart, Sophie came running back over. Does this mean Katie can come to my birthday party? David laughed, looking at Katie with hopeful eyes. What do you say? Katie smiled genuinely this time. I'd love to. As they walked out of the building together, David reached for Katie's hand. She took it, and for the first time in over a week, everything felt right. They had a long way to go, trust to rebuild and challenges to face. But they'd face them together honestly and openly. And that made all the difference.